Elena Martinez stepped through the revolving glass doors of Meridian Technologies, her heels clicking against the polished marble floor of the downtown Seattle headquarters. The morning rain had left droplets on her navy blazer, and she smoothed them away nervously as she approached the security desk. 23 floors above, the executive boardroom waited, and with it, another monthly meeting where she would sit quietly in the corner, taking notes while her husband commanded the room. The elevator ride felt endless. Elena watched the numbers climb, each floor marking another second closer to what she somehow knew would be different today. Marcus had been acting strangely all week, whispering phone calls behind closed doors and shooting her glances across their Bellevue mansion that seemed almost predatory. She had founded this company with him 8 years ago, back when they were newlyweds with nothing but dreams and her family's modest inheritance to fund their first prototype. Now Meridian Technologies was worth $40 million, and somehow she had become invisible. Comment below what state you are watching from, because this story proves that sometimes the most powerful people in corporate boardrooms are the ones everyone underestimates. The boardroom doors opened to reveal the usual suspects. 12 men in identical gray suits sat around the mahogany table, their laptops open and coffee cups steaming. Marcus stood at the head of the table, his silver hair perfectly styled and his custom Italian suit commanding immediate attention. He looked up as Elena entered, and something cold flashed in his eyes before the familiar smile spread across his face. "Good morning, everyone," Marcus announced, his voice carrying that practiced authority that had charmed investors and board members alike. "As you can see, Elena has joined us for our quarterly review." She busied herself setting up her laptop in the designated corner chair, the one without arms that faced away from the presentation screen. For 8 years, this had been her position. The note-taker, the observer, the wife who should be grateful to even be in the room. Marcus clicked to his first PowerPoint slide, revenue charts climbing impressively upward. "Gentlemen, we have exceeded all projections for the 3rd consecutive quarter. Our proprietary software algorithms have captured 18% of the Pacific Northwest market, and our expansion into California shows tremendous promise." Elena typed dutifully, recording every word even though she had written most of those algorithms herself. Late at night in their garage, while Marcus handled the business development calls, the presentation continued for 45 minutes. Marcus walked the board through strategic partnerships, market penetration, and competitive analysis. He spoke with the confidence of a man who truly believed he had built this empire single-handedly. Elena noticed how he never mentioned the early days, never referenced the countless nights she had spent debugging code while he practiced his sales pitches in the mirror. The board members nodded appreciatively, occasionally asking questions about implementation timelines and profit margins. Then Marcus paused, his hand resting on the laptop keyboard. His expression shifted, becoming almost theatrical in its seriousness. "Gentlemen, we need to address a significant operational concern that has been weighing on my mind for several months now." Elena looked up from her typing, something in his tone making her stomach clench with sudden dread. "As we have grown from a startup into a legitimate corporation, it has become increasingly clear that we need to streamline our organizational structure," Marcus continued, pacing slowly around the table. "We cannot afford to carry dead weight in leadership positions, especially when that weight represents a significant liability to our continued growth and professional reputation." Elena felt the blood drain from her face. Every board member was staring at her now, their expressions ranging from curiosity to poorly concealed satisfaction. She realized this entire meeting had been carefully orchestrated, a public execution disguised as a quarterly review. Marcus clicked to a new slide, one Elena had never seen before. It showed an organizational chart with her name conspicuously absent from every level of management. "Elena Martinez has served as our chief technical officer for the past 8 years, but unfortunately, her performance has become increasingly problematic. Her coding standards have slipped considerably, her project management skills are virtually non-existent, and frankly, her presence in strategic meetings has become more of a distraction than an asset." The words hit Elena like physical blows. She gripped her laptop tighter, her knuckles white against the black keys. This was not happening. This could not be happening. But Marcus was still talking, his voice gaining momentum as he warmed to his subject. Several of our key clients have expressed concerns about Elena's technical competency during implementation meetings. Marcus lied smoothly. Our development timeline has suffered significantly due to her inability to manage her team effectively. Most concerning of all, I have discovered evidence that she has been accessing confidential financial information without authorization, potentially compromising our fiduciary responsibilities to our investors. Board member Harrison Webb, a venture capitalist who had always treated Elena with barely concealed condescension, leaned forward with interest. This is obviously a serious matter, Marcus. What do you propose as a solution? Elena wanted to stand up, to scream that every word was fabricated, but her voice seemed trapped in her throat. Marcus clicked to his final slide. Effective immediately, I am terminating Elena Martinez from her position as Chief Technical Officer and removing her from all company premises. Her access credentials have already been revoked, and security will escort her out following this meeting. We simply cannot afford to compromise our corporate integrity any longer. The room erupted in murmurs of approval. Board members nodded sagely, as if they had always suspected this moment would come. Elena finally found her voice, but it came out as barely a whisper. Marcus, this is insane. You cannot just fire me. We built this company together. I wrote half the code that runs our entire platform. Marcus looked at her with the patient expression one might reserve for a confused child. Elena, your emotional attachment to this company is exactly what I am talking about. You seem to believe that our marriage somehow entitles you to a leadership role you have never earned. This is business, not therapy. Security guards appeared at the boardroom door as if summoned by magic. Two large men in black uniforms waited politely while Marcus gathered his presentation materials. Elena realized that every detail had been planned in advance, every humiliation carefully choreographed for maximum impact. Gentlemen, Marcus announced with obvious satisfaction, I believe we can all agree that this restructuring will position Meridian Technologies for unprecedented growth in the coming fiscal year. Without the burden of carrying underperforming personnel, we will finally be able to operate with the efficiency our investors deserve. As Elena was escorted from the boardroom, she could hear the board members already discussing implementation strategies, as if she had never existed at all. The security guards stood over Elena like prison wardens as she packed her personal items into a cardboard box. 8 years of her professional life reduced to a small collection of photographs, a coffee mug from their first trade show, and the potted succulent she had nurtured on her windowsill. Her hands shook as she disconnected her monitors, the same screens where she had written the breakthrough algorithms that made Meridian Technologies worth $40 million. Other employees walked past her office doorway, their eyes darting away when they realized what was happening. Jessica Chun from Human Resources appeared with a clipboard and a practiced expression of professional sympathy. Elena, I need you to sign these termination documents and return your building access card and company laptop. Elena stared at the papers, the legal language swimming before her eyes. Everything felt surreal, as if she were watching someone else's life collapse in slow motion. The larger security guard, whose name tag read Thompson, checked his watch impatiently. Ma'am, we need to have you out of the building within the next 15 minutes. Company policy for terminated employees. Elena nodded numbly, sealing the cardboard box with packing tape that squeaked against the silence. She had designed the security protocols he was now enforcing against her. As they walked toward the elevator, Elena caught a glimpse through the conference room glass. Marcus stood at the whiteboard, already presenting new organizational charts to the remaining department heads. Her name had been erased completely, as if she had never existed. The elevator doors closed, and Elena watched the floor numbers descend, each one marking another step away from everything she had built. The lobby felt different now. The same marble floors and modern furniture, but somehow foreign and unwelcoming. The receptionist, a young woman named Amy who had always greeted Elena warmly, now studied her computer screen with intense concentration, pretending not to notice the security escort. Elena understood. In corporate environments, association with failure could be contagious. Outside in the Seattle drizzle, Elena sat in her BMW for 20 minutes before she could bring herself to start the engine. The radio was playing soft jazz, and she remembered suddenly how she and Marcus used to listen to the same station during those early days when they drove to client meetings together. Back when they were partners in every sense of the word. It had been 2016 when she first showed Marcus her prototype algorithms for predictive data analysis. They were newlyweds then, sharing a cramped apartment in Capitol Hill and surviving on ramen noodles and shared dreams. Elena had been working as a software engineer for Amazon, but her real passion was the artificial intelligence project she developed in their converted bedroom office. Marcus was struggling to establish his consulting firm, charming potential clients with his natural charisma, but lacking the technical expertise to deliver meaningful results. Elena remembered the night she demonstrated her software for him, how his eyes had lit up with recognition of its commercial potential. "We could build something incredible together," he had said, taking her hands across their tiny kitchen table. "Your brilliant mind and my business instincts. We could revolutionize how companies handle data analysis." His enthusiasm had been infectious, and within 6 months they had incorporated Meridian Technologies with Elena's inheritance money as seed funding. Those first 2 years had been magical. Elena wrote code 18 hours a day while Marcus handled sales calls and investor presentations. They celebrated every small victory together, from their first client contract to their first employee hire. Marcus had called her his secret weapon, his technical genius, the brain behind their inevitable success. When had that partnership transformed into this brutal hierarchy? By evening, Marcus was holding court at Daniel's Broiler, the upscale steakhouse overlooking Lake Union, where Meridian Technologies conducted all its important business dinners. He had reserved the private dining room for 12 people, the same board members who had witnessed Elena's humiliation just hours earlier. The wine was flowing freely, and Marcus was in his element, regaling the group with stories of corporate restructuring and strategic vision. "Gentlemen," Harrison Webb raised his glass. "Here is to Marcus Rodriguez and his decisive leadership in removing dead weight from Meridian Technologies." The board members clinked glasses enthusiastically, their laughter echoing off the mahogany walls. Marcus smiled with satisfaction, basking in the admiration of men who controlled millions in venture capital funding. "I have to admit," Marcus said, cutting into his perfectly prepared filet mignon, "this decision has been weighing on me for months." Elena's performance declined so dramatically over the past year that keeping her on staff was becoming a liability to our entire operation. "But sometimes you have to make the tough choices for the good of the company." He spoke as if Elena had been some random employee rather than his wife and business partner. Board member Robert Chong nodded approvingly. "Your investors will definitely appreciate this kind of decisive action, Marcus. Companies that cannot make hard personnel decisions never achieve their full growth potential." Marcus smiled, already imagining the next quarterly report where he could claim full credit for improved operational efficiency. Meanwhile, across town in a Starbucks near Pike Place Market, Elena sat in a corner booth with Catherine Walsh, a corporate attorney whose reputation for aggressive litigation had made her legendary among Seattle's business community. Catherine was reviewing a thick manila folder of documents, her reading glasses perched on her nose as she studied each page with meticulous attention. Catherine looked up from the papers, her expression unreadable. "Elena, I need to ask you some very specific questions about the incorporation process when you and Marcus established Meridian Technologies. Do you still have copies of the original filing documents from 2016? Elena nodded, pulling a backup folder from her briefcase. "I kept copies of everything. Marcus always said I was obsessively organized, but I believe documentation was important for legal protection." Catherine spread the documents across the small table, creating a paper trail that told the story of Meridian Technologies from its very beginning. Original articles of incorporation, partnership agreements, financial disclosures, and most importantly, the signature pages that established corporate ownership structure. Her finger traced along specific paragraphs, highlighting key legal language that Elena had signed without fully understanding its implications. "This is very interesting," Catherine murmured, comparing signatures across multiple documents. "Elena, when you filed these incorporation papers with the Washington State Secretary of State, did Marcus review them before submission?" Elena tried to remember those hectic early days when they were rushing to establish legal business status. "Actually, no. Marcus was traveling constantly for client meetings, so I handled all the paperwork myself. I used the template our lawyer provided and filled everything out based on our partnership discussions. Catherine made several notes in the margins, her pen moving rapidly across the legal documents. Elena, I want you to understand that what I am seeing here could potentially change everything about your current situation. But I need 48 hours to verify certain details with the state filing office and confirm authenticity of these signatures. Can you meet me again Thursday evening? Elena felt something stirring inside her chest, the first hint of hope she had experienced since the morning's devastating board meeting. Catherine's confidence was infectious, and the careful way she handled each document suggested she had discovered something significant, something Marcus clearly did not know about. As Elena drove home through the Seattle traffic, she passed the Meridian Technologies building where security lights illuminated the company logo. Her company logo, she realized with sudden clarity. The business she had conceived, funded, and built with her own technical expertise. Tomorrow, Marcus would give interviews to technology journalists about his vision for the company's future. But Elena was beginning to suspect that his version of reality might be built on a foundation of legal quicksand that was about to shift beneath his feet. 3 days after Elena's termination, Marcus Rodriguez stood behind a polished podium in the Meridian Technologies lobby, facing a crowd of technology journalists and financial reporters. Camera lights glowed hot against his face as he adjusted his tie and smiled with the confidence of a man who believed he controlled every aspect of his professional destiny. Behind him, a massive digital screen displayed the company logo and stock projections that painted an impossibly bright future. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, Marcus began, his voice carrying that practiced authority that had charmed investors for 8 years. Today marks a transformative moment in Meridian Technologies' corporate evolution. We have successfully completed a strategic restructuring that positions our company for unprecedented growth in the artificial intelligence marketplace. The reporters scribbled notes eagerly, their digital recorders capturing every word of what promised to be a significant business announcement. But Marcus was not finished. His smile widened as he gestured toward the side of the room, where Victoria Sterling, Meridian's marketing director, stood in a stunning red dress that commanded immediate attention. On a more personal note, I am thrilled to announce my engagement to Victoria Sterling, who has been instrumental in establishing our brand presence across the Pacific Northwest. Victoria joined him at the podium, her diamond engagement ring catching the camera lights as she waved to the assembled crowd. The journalists erupted with questions. When will the wedding take place? How will this affect company leadership structure? Will Ms. Sterling assume additional corporate responsibilities? Marcus fielded each inquiry with practiced ease, his arm draped possessively around Victoria's waist. The optics were perfect, successful CEO moving forward with a brilliant new partner while leaving behind the dead weight that had held back his company's potential. Seattle Business Journal reporter Amanda Chun raised her hand. Mr. Rodriguez, can you comment on recent personnel changes at Meridian Technologies? Sources indicate that several key employees were terminated this week, including some founding team members. Marcus's expression never wavered, his media training serving him well in this moment of potential vulnerability. Amanda, strategic restructuring always requires difficult decisions about personnel who are no longer aligned with our corporate mission, he replied smoothly. I founded this company 8 years ago with a vision for revolutionizing data analysis through artificial intelligence, and that vision demands absolute excellence from every team member. We simply cannot afford to carry employees whose performance standards have declined below our operational requirements. The lie flowed so effortlessly that Marcus almost seemed to believe it himself. He spoke as if Elena had never existed, as if the algorithms powering their $40 million valuation had materialized from his imagination rather than her late-night coding sessions. Victoria nodded supportively beside him, playing the role of accomplished partner to his entrepreneurial genius. Across town, Elena sat in her Bellevue apartment living room, surrounded by 3 of the most formidable legal and financial minds in Seattle. Catherine Walsh had assembled a team that specialized in complex corporate litigation, and the documents spread across Elena's coffee table told a story that would have made Marcus's press conference significantly less celebratory. Thomas Chun, no relation to the reporter, was a forensic accountant whose reputation for uncovering corporate fraud had made him a legend among white-collar defense attorneys. He studied Meridian Technologies' financial records with the intensity of a detective examining crime scene evidence, his calculator clicking rapidly as he traced money flows through 8 years of corporate transactions. "Catherine, this is absolutely remarkable," Thomas said, looking up from a spreadsheet that detailed the company's initial capitalization. Elena provided 100% of the startup funding through her personal inheritance, but the corporate structure shows her listed as minority stakeholder. Either this represents deliberate fraud or the most incompetent legal work I have seen in 20 years of practice. The third member of their team was Dr. Rebecca Foster, a forensic document analyst whose expertise in handwriting and signature authentication had helped resolve some of the most complex corporate disputes in Washington state history. She examined the incorporation papers through a high-powered magnifying glass, comparing signatures across multiple documents with scientific precision. Rebecca held up 2 signature samples side by side. "Elena, I need you to look at these very carefully. This is your signature on the partnership agreement from 2016, and this is the same signature on the Articles of Incorporation filed with the Secretary of State office. But notice this discrepancy on the ownership percentage documentation. Someone altered these numbers after you signed the original documents." Elena leaned forward, studying the papers that had seemed so routine 8 years ago. The implications began crystallizing in her mind like pieces of a puzzle finally clicking into place. Marcus had manipulated the paperwork, changing her majority ownership into minority status while she was focused on building their technical platform. Catherine spread out additional documents, creating a timeline that revealed the true scope of Marcus's deception. "Elena, when you incorporated the business, you filed as the primary owner with controlling interest. These shell company structures were added later through amendments that require both partners' signatures, but I can find no evidence that you ever signed these modification documents." Meanwhile, Marcus's press conference was reaching its climactic moment. He clicked a remote control, and the screen behind him displayed a timeline of Meridian Technologies' greatest innovations. Every breakthrough algorithm, every major client acquisition, every technological advancement was presented as the product of his visionary leadership and strategic thinking. "Our proprietary artificial intelligence platform represents 4 years of intensive development under my direct supervision," Marcus told the assembled reporters. "The predictive analytics capabilities that have made us the fastest-growing tech company in Seattle emerged from my comprehensive understanding of machine learning applications and market demand analysis." He spoke with the conviction of someone who had completely rewritten history to serve his own narrative. Technology Weekly reporter James Morrison raised his hand. "Mr. Rodriguez, can you elaborate on the technical specifications of your AI algorithms? What programming languages form the foundation of your platform?" Marcus paused for just a moment, his confidence flickering imperceptibly before recovering with a smooth deflection. "James, the technical details are proprietary information that I cannot discuss publicly due to competitive concerns," Marcus replied. "What I can tell you is that my background in business development and strategic planning enabled me to identify market opportunities that our competitors completely missed. The innovation comes from understanding customer needs, not just writing code." Back in Elena's apartment, Rebecca Foster was explaining her findings with the enthusiasm of a scientist who had just made a groundbreaking discovery. "Elena, these incorporation documents represent one of the most sophisticated cases of corporate fraud I have encountered. Someone with detailed knowledge of both your signature patterns and legal filing procedures systematically altered your ownership status while maintaining the appearance of legitimate documentation." Catherine gathered the documents into organized stacks, her legal mind already constructing the courtroom presentation that would demolish Marcus's claims. "Elena, we have enough evidence here to not only restore your rightful ownership of Meridian Technologies, but also to pursue criminal fraud charges against Marcus for deliberate misrepresentation and theft of corporate assets." Thomas added his financial analysis to the growing case. "The monetary damages alone exceed $12 million when we calculate lost ownership value, wrongful termination, and emotional distress. But more importantly, these documents prove that you are the legitimate controlling shareholder of a company that Marcus has been operating under false pretenses for 8 years. Elena felt something shifting inside her chest, a sensation she had not experienced since the morning of her termination. For the first time in years, she was remembering what it felt like to have power, to control her own destiny rather than watching helplessly while others made decisions about her life and career. Catherine checked her watch and began packing the legal documents into secure briefcases. Elena, I am calling an emergency board meeting for tomorrow afternoon. Marcus believes he has eliminated his only threat, but he is about to discover that some legal foundations cannot be destroyed by corporate restructuring or media manipulation. As the legal team departed, Elena stood at her apartment window overlooking Lake Washington. In the distance, the Seattle skyline glittered with lights from countless office buildings where other corporate dramas were unfolding. Tomorrow, Marcus would learn that his perfect press conference and engagement announcement had been built on a foundation of lies that was about to crumble beneath his feet. She thought about Victoria Sterling, the marketing director who had looked so confident and secure standing beside Marcus at the podium. Soon she would discover that her fiancé had built his empire on stolen foundations, and that the real owner of Meridian Technologies was a woman he had systematically humiliated and erased from corporate history. The phone in Elena's apartment rang once, a brief notification that Catherine Walsh had successfully filed the legal documents that would transform tomorrow's board meeting from routine corporate business into something Marcus could never have anticipated. 8 years of careful deception were about to unravel in a single afternoon, and Elena Martinez was finally ready to reclaim everything that had always belonged to her. The emergency board meeting notification arrived in every member's email at exactly 9:30 Friday morning, just 18 hours after Marcus's triumphant press conference. The message was brief and professionally worded, signed by Catherine Walsh of Walsh & Associates legal firm, requesting immediate attendance for matters of urgent corporate governance requiring board review. Marcus stared at his computer screen in his corner office, reading the email 3 times before the implications began penetrating his consciousness. He had never heard of Catherine Walsh, which immediately triggered his suspicion. In 8 years of running Meridian Technologies, Marcus had carefully controlled every aspect of board communication, ensuring that all legal matters flowed through his personally selected corporate counsel. The idea that some unknown attorney could demand an emergency meeting felt like a direct challenge to his authority, something that should have been impossible given his position as founder and chief executive officer. Marcus called his assistant Victoria into his office, the same Victoria who had stood beside him at yesterday's engagement announcement. She entered with a coffee cup and her usual bright smile, still glowing from the attention their engagement had generated in the technology press. Marcus, the board meeting is set for 2 o'clock this afternoon. I already confirmed availability with all 12 members, though several expressed confusion about why we needed an emergency session so soon after Wednesday's quarterly review. The Meridian Technologies boardroom felt different when Marcus entered at exactly 2 o'clock. The usual atmosphere of controlled authority had been replaced by something electric and unpredictable. Board members whispered among themselves, their expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed annoyance at having their schedules disrupted. Harrison Webb sat at his usual position near the head of the table, checking his phone with obvious impatience. Marcus took his customary seat at the head of the mahogany table and cleared his throat to call the meeting to order. However, before he could speak, the boardroom doors opened and 3 people entered whom he had never seen before. The woman leading the group was tall and commanding, wearing a charcoal gray suit that spoke of serious money and serious legal power. Behind her walked a man carrying multiple briefcases and a woman with what appeared to be scientific equipment. "Good afternoon, gentlemen," the woman announced, her voice cutting through the room's murmured conversations like a blade. "I am Catherine Walsh, senior partner at Walsh & Associates. I represent the majority shareholder of Meridian Technologies in matters concerning corporate governance and fiduciary responsibility." Marcus felt his stomach drop as if he were in an elevator that had suddenly plummeted 20 floors. Marcus stood up abruptly, his chair rolling backward from the force. "I'm sorry, but there must be some misunderstanding. I am Marcus Rodriguez, founder and chief executive officer of Meridian Technologies. This is a closed board meeting for company leadership, and you have no authority to interrupt our proceedings." His voice carried the practiced authority of 8 years in the corporate driver's seat, but something in Catherine Walsh's expression told him that his usual intimidation tactics would prove ineffective. Catherine smiled with the cold precision of a surgeon preparing to make the first incision. "Mr. Rodriguez, thank you for that clarification. However, I am afraid your understanding of this company's ownership structure contains some significant factual errors that we need to address immediately." She gestured to her associates, who began setting up a laptop and projection screen with efficient professionalism. The board members exchanged glances of confusion and growing concern. Robert Chong leaned forward, his venture capitalist instincts sensing that something fundamental was about to shift in ways he could not yet comprehend. "Ms. Walsh, perhaps you could explain exactly what authority you believe you have to disrupt this board meeting and make claims about our corporate ownership." Catherine connected her laptop to the projection system, and the first document appeared on the screen in crisp detail. "This is the original Articles of Incorporation for Meridian Technologies, filed with the Washington State Secretary of State Office on March 15, 2016. As you can see, the document establishes Elena Martinez Rodriguez as the majority shareholder with 51% ownership of all corporate assets and voting rights. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face as he stared at the document on the screen. That cannot be correct. Elena was never the majority shareholder. She contributed some initial funding, but I founded this company and maintained controlling interest from the beginning. His voice was rising, panic creeping in around the edges of his usually controlled demeanor. Catherine clicked to the next slide, revealing a detailed timeline of corporate filings and ownership documentation. "Mr. Rodriguez, these are certified copies of every document filed with the State Corporation Commission over the past 8 years. Elena Martinez Rodriguez not only provided 100% of the initial funding through her personal inheritance, but she also filed all incorporation papers, established the corporate structure, and signed as the primary owner and chief executive officer." The board members were now leaning forward, studying the documents with the focused attention of men who suddenly realized they might have been operating under completely false assumptions. Harrison Webb's face had gone pale, his usual confidence replaced by the expression of someone watching a financial disaster unfold in real time. Dr. Rebecca Foster stepped forward, carrying what appeared to be scientific analysis equipment. "Gentlemen, I am a forensic document analyst certified by the Washington State Bar Association. Over the past week, I have conducted comprehensive handwriting and signature analysis on all corporate documents related to Meridian Technologies' ownership structure. The results are absolutely conclusive." She clicked to a new slide showing side-by-side signature comparisons under high magnification. "These are Elena Martinez's authentic signatures on the original incorporation documents, compared with signature samples from bank records and personal identification. Every signature on the founding documents is authentic and legally binding. However, these subsequent ownership modification documents contain signatures that show clear evidence of forgery." Marcus gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white against the dark wood. "This is insane. Elena could not have been the majority owner. I built this company from nothing. I secured every major client. I developed the business strategy that made us profitable." The desperation in his voice was becoming obvious to everyone in the room. Catherine's expression remained professionally neutral, but there was something almost satisfied in her tone as she continued the presentation. "Mr. Rodriguez, forensic accounting analysis reveals that Elena Martinez not only provided all startup funding, but she also wrote every algorithm that forms the foundation of your artificial intelligence platform. The technical innovations you claimed credit for yesterday during your press conference were developed entirely by Ms. Martinez during the first 4 years of corporate operations." Thomas Chin stepped forward with financial documents that painted an even more devastating picture. "Gentlemen, these bank records show that Marcus Rodriguez contributed $0 to the initial capitalization of Meridian Technologies. Furthermore, financial analysis reveals that he systematically altered ownership percentages through fraudulent documentation while Elena Martinez was focused on product development and technical implementation." Board member David Liu, who had always prided himself on thorough due diligence, looked physically sick as he processed the implications. Are you telling us that we have been operating under completely false assumptions about this company's ownership and leadership structure for 8 years? His voice carried the tone of a man who was beginning to calculate potential legal liability. Catherine nodded gravely. That is exactly what I am telling you. Elena Martinez Rodriguez is the rightful majority owner of Meridian Technologies, and she has been systematically excluded from corporate governance through fraudulent document manipulation and deliberate misrepresentation of ownership structure. Marcus stood up so quickly that his chair toppled backward, clattering against the wall with a sound that made everyone jump. This is a conspiracy. Elena must have hired you to fabricate these documents because she's bitter about being terminated for poor performance. No court in the world would accept this kind of obvious fraud as legitimate evidence. Dr. Foster clicked to her final slide, showing microscopic analysis of paper fibers and ink composition. Mr. Rodriguez, document authentication is a precise science. These incorporation papers were filed 8 years ago using period-appropriate materials and legal procedures. The forgeries are the subsequent modification documents that altered Elena's ownership status, and those documents show clear evidence of recent creation using different ink and paper stock. The room fell into complete silence as the magnitude of the revelation settled over the board members like a heavy blanket. Every assumption they had made about Meridian Technologies' leadership, every business decision they had approved, every strategic direction they had endorsed had been built on a foundation of lies and forged documents. Harrison Webb was the first to find his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. If Elena Martinez is the majority shareholder, then she has the legal authority to terminate any employee, including executive leadership, without board approval. His venture capitalist mind was already calculating the financial implications of backing the wrong person for 8 years. Catherine gathered her presentation materials with the satisfaction of a lawyer who had just delivered a perfect closing argument. Gentlemen, Elena Martinez Rodriguez will be joining us momentarily to assume her rightful position as Chief Executive Officer and majority shareholder of Meridian Technologies. I trust you will provide her with the same professional courtesy you have shown Mr. Rodriguez during his tenure as her employee. Marcus collapsed back into his chair, the reality of his situation finally penetrating his consciousness. 8 years of careful manipulation and systematic deception were unraveling in real time, and there was absolutely nothing he could do to stop it. The door opened, and Elena Martinez walked into the boardroom with the quiet confidence of someone who had finally come home. Elena Martinez entered the Meridian Technologies boardroom with the quiet authority of someone who had finally come home after a long and difficult journey. She wore a navy blue suit that commanded respect, her shoulders straight, and her expression calm despite the magnitude of what was about to unfold. The 12 board members who had witnessed her humiliation just 5 days earlier now stared at her with expressions ranging from shock to poorly concealed panic. Marcus remained collapsed in his chair at the head of the table, his face ashen and his hands trembling slightly as the full implications of his exposure continued to sink in. The confident executive who had dominated corporate meetings for 8 years had been replaced by someone who looked physically diminished, as if the revelation had somehow drained him of his very substance. "Good afternoon, gentlemen," Elena said, her voice carrying a new note of command that none of them had ever heard before. As the majority shareholder and rightful chief executive officer of Meridian Technologies, I am calling this board meeting to order. Her tone was neither angry nor vindictive, but rather possessed the calm certainty of someone who finally understood the full extent of her power. She walked slowly around the mahogany table, making eye contact with each board member in turn. Harrison Webb, Robert Chong, David Liu, and the 9 others who had nodded approvingly when Marcus terminated her now shifted uncomfortably in their executive chairs. The power dynamic in the room had shifted so completely that the air itself seemed different, charged with new possibility and latent consequences. Catherine Walsh placed a fresh stack of legal documents on the table, the sound of paper against wood echoing in the suddenly quiet room. "Elena, these are the corporate resolutions we discussed, ready for your signature as majority shareholder and chief executive officer. The first order of business is addressing the fraudulent termination of your employment and the systematic misrepresentation of company ownership." Elena picked up a gold pen, the same pen she had used years ago to sign the original incorporation documents that had established her rightful ownership. Effective immediately, I am reversing all personnel decisions made by Marcus Rodriguez during his unauthorized tenure as acting chief executive officer. Any employee terminated during the past week is hereby reinstated with full compensation for lost wages and benefits. She signed the document with steady strokes, each letter forming with the precision of someone who understood that every mark carried legal weight. Marcus watched helplessly as his carefully orchestrated restructuring was dismantled with a few signatures, his grand vision for corporate efficiency crumbling before his eyes. Harrison Webb cleared his throat nervously, his venture capitalist instincts finally catching up with the new reality. Elena, I believe I speak for the entire board when I say that we were operating under completely false information regarding the company's ownership structure. Had we known the true facts about your position as majority shareholder, our support would have been entirely different. Elena nodded acknowledgement of his statement, but her expression remained neutral. Mr. Webb, I appreciate your clarification. However, due diligence regarding corporate ownership is a basic fiduciary responsibility for board members. Your failure to verify Marcus's claims over 8 years represents a significant oversight that will need to be addressed in our governance review. The board members exchanged glances of growing concern. They were beginning to understand that Elena's calm demeanor did not indicate forgiveness, but rather the controlled response of someone who was methodically planning their next moves. Robert Chung leaned forward, his face pale with anxiety. Elena, what does this mean for our positions on the board? Are we facing potential legal liability for our unknowing participation in this fraud? Elena considered his question carefully before responding. That will depend largely on your willingness to cooperate with the investigation into Marcus's systematic misrepresentation of corporate ownership and decision-making authority. Gentlemen who demonstrate full cooperation and transparency may find themselves in a more favorable position than those who attempt to minimize their involvement. Catherine Walsh opened another briefcase, revealing documents that made Marcus visibly flinch. Elena, we also need to address the criminal fraud charges that Mr. Rodriguez's actions have made inevitable. The systematic forgery of corporate documents, misrepresentation of ownership structure, and theft of intellectual property constitute serious felonies under Washington state law. Thomas Chin stepped forward with financial analysis that painted an even more devastating picture. The monetary damages exceed $15 million when we calculate 8 years of wrongful exclusion from corporate profits, stolen intellectual property rights, and deliberate misrepresentation to investors and business partners. However, the criminal charges carry potential prison sentences that make the financial penalties seem secondary. Marcus finally found his voice, though it came out as a desperate whisper. Elena, please, you have to understand that everything I did was for the good of the company. I never meant to hurt you personally. I just believed that my business experience made me better suited to handle the executive responsibilities. We can work something out privately without involving criminal prosecution. Elena turned to face him directly, and for the first time since entering the room, her expression showed a hint of the pain and betrayal she had endured. Marcus, you systematically erased me from the company I founded and built with my own inheritance money. You claimed credit for algorithms I wrote during countless late-night coding sessions. You terminated me in front of 12 witnesses and had me escorted from the building by security guards. There is no private resolution that can address 8 years of deliberate fraud and personal humiliation. She signed another document, this one officially terminating Marcus Rodriguez from all positions within Meridian Technologies for cause. Effective immediately, Marcus Rodriguez is terminated from employment with this company. His access credentials are revoked, his corporate credit cards are canceled, and security will escort him from the premises. Any attempt to contact employees, clients, or business partners on behalf of Meridian Technologies will be considered corporate espionage and prosecuted accordingly. The same security guards who had escorted Elena from the building 5 days earlier now stood at the boardroom door, waiting for instructions. The irony was not lost on anyone in the room, least of all Marcus, who looked at Elena with a mixture of disbelief and growing terror. This cannot be happening. 8 years of building this company cannot just disappear because of some technical paperwork issues. Elena's expression hardened slightly. Marcus, those technical paperwork issues constitute systematic fraud and theft of corporate assets. You have spent 8 years claiming credit for my innovations while excluding me from profits and decision-making authority that rightfully belong to me. The criminal investigation will determine whether your actions constitute deliberate conspiracy or merely opportunistic fraud. As the security guards moved toward Marcus, he made one final desperate attempt to maintain some semblance of dignity. Elena, I want you to know that I genuinely believed I was helping the company succeed. My engagement to Victoria, the press conference, everything was about building a positive public image for Meridian Technologies. You have to believe that my intentions were never malicious. Elena watched as the guards helped Marcus to his feet, his expensive suit now wrinkled and his confident posture completely destroyed. Your intentions became irrelevant the moment you forged my signature on corporate documents and stole 8 years of my professional life. The criminal justice system will evaluate your motivations, not me. The boardroom fell silent as Marcus was escorted from the building, his career and reputation destroyed in the span of a single afternoon. Through the conference room windows, Elena could see news vans already gathering in the parking lot, their satellite dishes extended as technology journalists sensed that a major story was breaking at one of Seattle's most prominent tech companies. Catherine Walsh gathered the signed documents into her briefcase, each paper representing another step in Elena's complete reclamation of her rightful position. Elena, the press conference is scheduled for 4 o'clock. We've prepared a statement that explains the ownership clarification and criminal fraud investigation without providing details that might compromise the prosecution. Elena looked around the boardroom one final time, seeing it now through completely different eyes. For 8 years, she had sat in the corner taking notes while Marcus commanded attention and respect. Today, she had reclaimed not just her company, but her identity as the technical visionary who had built Meridian Technologies from nothing but algorithms and ambition. The board members remained seated, uncertain whether they were supposed to leave or continue with whatever business Elena deemed appropriate. Harrison Webb finally gathered enough courage to ask the question that was haunting all of them. Elena, what happens to us now? Are our positions on the board secure, or should we be preparing resignation letters? Elena smiled for the first time since entering the room, but it was not a particularly warm expression. Gentlemen, your future involvement with Meridian Technologies will depend entirely on your willingness to support the legitimate leadership of this company going forward. Those who demonstrate loyalty and competence will find opportunities for continued collaboration. Those who do not will find themselves seeking alternative investment opportunities. As Elena prepared to leave for her press conference, she realized that justice was not just about punishment, but about restoration. She had reclaimed her company, her reputation, and most importantly, her sense of personal power. Marcus Rodriguez had spent 8 years trying to erase her from corporate history, but Elena Martinez had proven that some foundations cannot be destroyed by fraud and manipulation. The real owner of Meridian Technologies was finally coming home. 6 months after the devastating board meeting that destroyed Marcus Rodriguez's carefully constructed empire, Elena Martinez stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her newly renovated corner office, watching the Seattle skyline sparkle in the late afternoon sunshine. The Meridian Technologies headquarters had undergone a complete transformation under her authentic leadership, from the lobby displays showcasing her actual innovations to the corporate culture that now celebrated technical excellence over manipulative charisma. The company's stock price had climbed 47% since Elena's ownership revelation, driven by investor confidence in genuine leadership and the technical innovations that were finally being credited to their actual creator. Major clients who had been hesitant about Meridian's direction under Marcus's management were now signing multi-year contracts, attracted by Elena's transparent communication and proven technical expertise. Elena's assistant knocked gently on the office door before entering with the afternoon financial reports. Ms. Martinez, the quarterly earnings exceed projections by 18%, and Forbes wants to schedule an interview about your inclusion on their list of America's most influential tech executives. Elena smiled as she reviewed the numbers that reflected not just financial success, but vindication of her vision for what Meridian Technologies could become under honest leadership. The phone on her desk buzzed with a call from Catherine Walsh, who had become not just Elena's attorney but a trusted advisor in navigating the complex aftermath of Marcus's fraud case. "Catherine, how did the final sentencing hearing go this morning?" Elena asked, settling into her executive chair with the confidence of someone who had finally claimed her rightful place in the corporate hierarchy. His legal team's attempts to claim ignorance were completely unsuccessful given the forensic evidence of deliberate forgery. Marcus's attempts to rebuild his reputation through desperate lawsuits against Elena and Meridian Technologies had spectacularly backfired. His claims of wrongful termination and defamation had been dismissed with prejudice after Catherine Walsh presented overwhelming evidence of his systematic fraud. The legal proceedings had only served to further document his criminal behavior while generating additional negative publicity that made him completely unemployable in the technology industry. Elena walked past the memorial wall she had installed in the lobby, featuring photographs and biographical information about every employee who had been wrongfully terminated during Marcus's fraudulent tenure. The Meridian Foundation, established with Elena's personal funding, provided financial support and career placement assistance for professionals who had been victimized by corporate fraud and workplace manipulation. Victoria Sterling, Marcus's former fiancée and current unemployed marketing director, had attempted to distance herself from the scandal by claiming complete ignorance of his fraud. However, financial records revealed that she had personally benefited from Marcus's theft of Elena's innovations, receiving bonus payments and promotion opportunities that were directly tied to algorithms Elena had developed. Her engagement ring had been repossessed when Marcus's assets were frozen, and her attempts to find employment in Seattle's competitive marketing landscape had been consistently unsuccessful. The board members who had participated in Elena's humiliation had experienced varying degrees of professional consequences based on their willingness to cooperate with the criminal investigation. Harrison Webb, who had led the toast celebrating Elena's termination, found his venture capital firm facing investor lawsuits for inadequate due diligence. His reputation for thorough business analysis had been permanently damaged by his 8-year failure to verify Marcus's ownership claims. Robert Chong had shown more wisdom by immediately cooperating with federal investigators and publicly acknowledging his firm's failures in corporate governance oversight. His venture capital portfolio had survived the scandal, though his personal reputation required years of rebuilding. David Liu had resigned from 3 corporate boards after his involvement in the Meridian fraud became public knowledge. His career in corporate governance effectively ended by his association with Marcus's deception. Elena's phone displayed a news alert about Marcus's final court appearance, where he had attempted one last desperate speech about his contributions to Meridian Technologies' growth and success. The federal judge had interrupted his rambling statement to remind him that every innovation he claimed credit for had been stolen from Elena Martinez, and that his 4-year sentence reflected unusual leniency given the magnitude of his fraud. Seattle Business Journal reporter Amanda Chun, who had covered Marcus's engagement announcement 6 months earlier, was now working on a comprehensive investigative series about corporate fraud in the technology industry. Her interviews with Elena had revealed the full scope of systematic deception that allowed incompetent executives to steal credit for innovations developed by more talented colleagues. Elena opened her laptop to review the latest acquisition proposal, a document that would have seemed impossible 6 months ago, but now represented the natural expansion of her restored corporate authority. Rodriguez Consulting, the business development firm Marcus had operated before joining Meridian Technologies, was facing bankruptcy due to client lawsuits and reputation destruction. Elena's legal team had negotiated to acquire their remaining assets for a fraction of their previous value. The irony was delicious. Marcus had spent years building his consulting firm by claiming expertise in corporate strategy and business development, but his criminal conviction had made those claims obviously fraudulent. Former clients were demanding refunds for services provided under false pretenses, and the firm's intellectual property had been revealed as largely plagiarized from other sources. Elena signed the acquisition documents with the same gold pin she had used to reclaim her company 6 months earlier. Rodriguez Consulting's client list and business methodologies would be absorbed into Meridian Technologies, where they would be properly managed by executives with actual competence rather than manipulative charisma. Catherine Walsh called with the final update on the criminal case aftermath. "Elena, the federal investigation uncovered similar fraud patterns at two other companies where Marcus had previously worked. Additional victims are coming forward with evidence of systematic plagiarism and intellectual property theft dating back over 12 years. His criminal behavior was apparently much more extensive than we initially realized. As Elena prepared to leave the office, she reflected on the journey that had brought her from humiliated termination to complete vindication. The corner chair where she had once sat taking notes had been removed, replaced by a conference table where technical innovation was properly credited and strategic decisions were made through transparent collaboration rather than manipulative authority. Her reflection was interrupted by Dr. Rebecca Foster, the forensic document analyst whose scientific expertise had provided the irrefutable evidence that destroyed Marcus's claims. Rebecca was delivering the final analysis of documents recovered from Rodriguez Consulting, revealing additional instances of signature forgery and identity theft that would likely result in additional criminal charges. Elena, these documents show that Marcus's pattern of fraud extended far beyond Meridian Technologies, Dr. Foster reported. He systematically stole credit for innovations developed by at least 6 other technical professionals over the past decade. The criminal investigation has opened a federal inquiry into corporate fraud that may result in additional prosecutions. As Elena walked through the Meridian Technologies lobby toward the parking garage, she passed the digital display showing real-time stock prices and corporate achievements. Every metric reflected the company's success under authentic leadership, revenue growth, client satisfaction, employee retention, and industry recognition for technical innovation. Marcus Rodriguez's name had been completely erased from corporate history, replaced by accurate attribution of achievements to their actual creators. Have you ever been underestimated like Elena? Share your story in the comments about when someone discovered your hidden strength, because sometimes the quiet ones in the corner are the ones who actually hold all the real power. The Seattle evening was clear and bright as Elena drove home to her Bellevue mansion, the same house where she had once sat in her kitchen reading termination documents and wondering how her life had fallen apart so completely. Tonight, she would review architectural plans for the new Meridian Technologies campus, a facility designed to celebrate technical innovation and authentic leadership rather than manipulative corporate politics. Marcus Rodriguez was spending his first night in federal prison. His carefully constructed empire of lies finally collapsed under the weight of truth and justice. Elena Martinez was going home to plan the future of the company she had always owned, but had finally learned to control.